So, and we're here we are. It is Wednesday. I'm here at Makers Academy. Thanks, Makers Academy. 12-week bootcamp in the center of thriving London, Silicon Roundabout. Thanks for making the space available for us, Makers Academy. I'm here with Paul. He's here, as is traditional. We've got a few people with us in the Hangout, Dag and Nikita and Osipenko. And yeah, we are into, and I get confused because I think it must be week 4. Is it week 4 of 1692? I think it is. And what we can sensibly do at this stage is go to screen share, as I raise my hand up and down a few times. Monty Python is playing at the O2 just around the corner this evening, so if it goes all surreal and crazy, you'll know why. Let's go off and see here. We've got the MOOC. We've got the links being pasted everywhere. Other people to come and chat with us. Let's go to the courseware and just start with what's going on. I think the key things that happened in the last 7 days since our last office hours were that, if we go here to the student view, oh, what it does, I hate the way it does that. If I go from if I'm looking at something that's not yet released and I switch to the student view, it does that error. So what we had since last time, Legacy Homework 2 was released, which is adding a new feature. And we've also had all the design patterns materials were released yesterday, in fact. And so I guess the things that we could look at today include, if there are any more questions on the part 1 of the Legacy Homework. Obviously, we can discuss part 2 of the Legacy Homework. We could also discuss anything arising from the design patterns. We also have more feedback. I have here the MOOC Cafe second week analysis, which we could also go through, and we can look at what the hot things are on the forum. Does anybody have any particular preference as to where we start? Oh, greetings, Michelle. Great to have you with us again. Is there? I think we should try to turn the Q&A system on, which sometimes that fails. Can I do that now? Okay, we'll see if there's questions or chat. Yeah, I guess if people don't have a particular preference, let's start maybe with, does anybody have any outstanding questions on the Legacy Homework 1, which, as we remember, was installing typo and then fixing the categories issue? Does anybody have anything that they want to say about that, or any questions they have? Anything they're still stuck on? I think you can still get 75% on that until tomorrow, if anybody's still working on it.
I don't have any questions about.
No. Sure. If not, new information from Armando. We'll look at that later. Yeah. So shall we move on to homework 2 then? So this was a bit chunkier. I want to apologize for the poor help video in which I was distracted, and then the launchy gem, which I demoed the previous night, didn't work, and I didn't have time to record it. And yeah, we're anyway. But yeah, sometimes things don't go exactly as you plan. But yeah, so we had kind of a high-level overview of this merge articles thing. We increased the size of that there. Did anybody want anything they want to share about Legacy Homework 2? Anything they got stuck on, or still stuck on, and we could look at together? Or let's switch over to the chat thing. I guess I will assume by the lack of clamoring, raucous questions that, although I'm sure this wasn't an easy homework necessarily, but did people make it through? Okay, Paul.
Yeah.
So Sam, I'm sorry. Yeah, can I ask a question?
Please do.
So I don't know. Maybe I did something wrong, but I essentially what I did, I added successfully the form, which allow me to at the edit page of the article,
Right.
which allow me to enter the ID of the article with which I'd like to merge it.
Yes.
Then I sort of debug it. I add ability to, in my view, to display the params through debug params, to be able to view the params which send it to my controller. So I can successfully capture the value on the controller, and then I develop a method on the model layer. So all the stack works fine when I do it by hand, when I try to send through from the view to the controller, and I see the changes on the model. So when I sort of deal it at the code layer, the changes happens in the database. It's fine. But when I try to do this through the block, the admin panel, I have some problems. The changes is not happen. I don't see any articles. I don't see merging articles. And I wonder, maybe there is some such tools, maybe some.
Yeah, well, I think to sort of help you, maybe what we would need to do is have a look at your code. I mean, I think that there are. I guess. Did you want to? Are you in a position to screen? Do you have your VM running and you're in a position to screen share, or?
Yep. Give me a second. I can show you my code.
I mean, just to summarize what I think Nikita was saying there was that basically he's sort of seeing it happen in various places from the tests. I guess from, like, you know, the view communicates to the controller, goes to the model and comes to saving. But then when he tries it through the the interface, then it encounters some kind of problem. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So yes, and that's often something that can be, that's if only, you know, the test would just, when the test passes, that it then would work. If only. It's there's always seems to be something. As I've been saying here at Makers a lot today, computers they're like that person at the party who says, "Oh, no, you didn't mean to say with who, you meant to say with whom," and like they are that person on steroids. They are so pedantic about you can have all the points of the test working, but still the end-to-end stuff will not work. And of course, sometimes that comes down to the nature of writing the test and the sort of seams between the tests. But I think Nikita has got a code share going up there.
I'm ready to share my code.
Yeah. Yes.
So my first step was I added a form which allows me to enter the ID at the admin panel. I did the following thing. Actually, at the bottom, I just included the. Give me a second.
Your font is a little bit small. I can sort of make it out. I think other people might have trouble. You might want to increase the font size.
It's okay. No.
Slightly. Yeah. Go on. So yeah, so you added a thing there into your admin existing form.
Yes. Let me check. Because I have few different versions of this type, and I'm not sure this is the right one.
And in fact, actually, as you saw, if you watch the help video on or the attempted help video, the panning video, as we call it, I had two versions of the code, and I ended up updating the gem file for launching in the wrong one. And so multiple versions of the code is often the pain, really. While Aris Nikita is looking for the appropriate bit of code. Did anybody else have any comments on this homework or places that they got stuck? Or
I have a similar problem.
oh yes, Petra. What? Oh right. So you got.
I can't figure out why my merge button and the ID box doesn't pop up.
Right. Sure. Well, I mean, if you want to get the code up and ready, we could have a look at it together. Nikita, it looked like you had a merge button there. Are you confident that you're now in the code that we want to be looking at?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's carry on, and we'll have a look at Petra's code afterwards. If it so there you've got.
So what I did here is I essentially create a partial.
Yeah.
A separate partial.
Okay.
Here, this is a very simple form which allows me to enter some article, as you see, some header. That's all. Very simple. Then let's go to the controller. Give me a second. I think it should be.
And do you have do you have a Cucumber test that's testing the kind of top level view, as it were, like the HTML interface, and then you have a I
think yes, I absolutely confident that I have the respect test which tests my data lore, I mean model. But I'm not sure.
You have a test that tests the model. You have unit
yes,
test.
that I try to follow your advice about that I should first step. What I should do is create a Cucumber test which tests this ability to enter data and post it, and then I should test the model lore. I decrease layer of abstraction to test a code itself, a code at the data lore itself, and at this layer I use RSpec to test my merge abilities.
Okay.
I need to find it. Where
I mean, I guess you know, I saw two things already there in the ERB files that you showed me that could be potential problems. But so if we just go back and look at the _merge.html.erb, I kind of noticed immediately that your button is outside of the form. So you've got form tags on line 3 and 5, and then you've got a button outside of it.
You mean?
Yeah. So like
here, I place here. I should place it here.
Well, usually we would have the button inside the form tags. So
button.
Yeah.
Above or at the bottom?
Yeah, I think usually below, because you'd usually have the input. However, we're kind of in a situation here where we're committing a cardinal sin, which is that we're mucking around with bits of app code on the off chance that it's going to improve our situation, and that's a dangerous place to be. I sort of mentioned that, not suggesting that you immediately change it, but that might be a problem. I also noticed that you're rendering that partial for this form inside the _form.html.erb, and I wonder if perhaps you are nesting your form tags as a consequence. Like if you
I see what you mean, but I'm not sure that you saw it correctly in my code. I remember this quote about do not nest in one form inside another, and I strongly commit myself to not do this. Not to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm almost sure that I didn't follow this
way. But if you go back to _form.html.erb, scroll to the top of that file for a minute, right? Although there are no other form tags in this file, note that this _form.html.erb has inputs in it, right? And they won't really work, I think, unless we have them inside a form tag. If you look at, if you go back to pop up the sidebar where you've got the files, if you go and look at where _form is called in there, I think.
You mean render?
Right. So where is that partial called from? So I think it and it kind of goes backwards and forwards here. But if you click on the new.html.erb, so there's this thing of like render admin shared edit. So if you go into admin shared edit, which is so you're like you have to. So you're in admin there and you're in admin content, but if you
I see
there,
what you mean.
On line 2, you've got the form tag there, and then on line 4, you're rendering the form partial inside that form tag. So
I got it.
I'm pretty sure you've got a nested form tag there. That was just superficially looking at your templates. I was seeing one that the merge button was not inside the form in your merge partial, but then independently of that, I think you've got the nested form thing there. So I would be surprised if your cucumber test could pass if it was correctly checking. Like ideally, the cucumber test will actually click on that link and check that you can submit properly. I suspect that maybe you're having to click on the link. The way that you had that arrangement there, where you had the button outside of your nested form, what that would seem to me is that when you clicked on that button, it would submit the parent form, but it wouldn't submit any of the data in that nested form.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So
I think this is a mistake. Yes, thank you, Sam.
No, you're most welcome. It's a tricky. This legacy code that we have here is really tricky in the way that it uses multiple partials and pulls these things in, and it's just an example of. I mean, it's frustrating, but I think it's an example of the real kind of code that you encounter in the world. Just
I think this is the major reason, because when I try to drill out to sort of trace my flow of this ID through controller to the model, it looks okay. I mean, I see changes, I see like article merges, but when I try to do this through the panel of the block, it doesn't work.
No.
And I sort of scratch my head why.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think this is the reason why.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, and I think the thing there is what we might have. Yeah. So I think in this case we were lucky that that was sort of I was able to catch that. But ideally, again, rather than as you did there, I wanted to say rather than making a quick change in the merge form, what you want to do is be driving any changes that you make through your cucumber test. And ideally, your cucumber test would be you'd have the failing cucumber test above you. So even if it was allowing you to click the link in the. Have you got the? Can you just quickly open? Have you got the merge article cucumber test? You scroll down to features. You pop open the features directory.
Yes.
There. So if we look at your merge article features, so you've got the thing. So I guess this was failing, right? I mean.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you did have the top level failing test, and then right. So your lower level specs were failing. I mean, that's a situation there where maybe an additional test in a view spec or something for. I would suspect yeah. So what you've got there is that the cucumber test is doing the right thing there.
Yes.
And you're trying to testing the controller. If it received the right data from the view, it would do the right thing. And the problem was there that actually the view was not communicating with the controller correctly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, tricky one. Yeah. Petra,
this is my question. You answered my questions.
I'm trying something else.
Yeah, Petra, you had a related issue or something different? Do you want to share your screen and?
Oh, I'm trying something else at the moment.
Okay. Sure. No problem. It's always good to try different things. Does anybody else have any other comments or thoughts about this legacy homework? We can come back to it later. Let's leave it there for the moment and perhaps move on to the design patterns, which I think is an interesting part of the course. Maybe not everyone will necessarily have had a chance to watch all of them. I think, Paul, you were saying the design patterns you were enjoying. Yeah. With any one in particular, or just the general?
I've gone through a lot of them, but like the single responsibility, I think. Is,
yeah.
The Demeter principles of the whole.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, Demeter or Demeter, I'm not sure which is the way to pronounce it particularly. Interesting that you said that the Demeter or Demeter principle is confusing. I think the single responsibility principle is quite straightforward. If you've got something, a method, a class, whatever, it should do one thing and do it well. The Demeter principle I guess partly because I've been reviewing a lot of code here at Makers recently, of people. So Makers takes people who've had no coding experience and tries to turn them into, and successfully turns many of them into web developers over the course of 12 weeks. And so, but people early on are writing, you know, they can get themselves in all sorts of knots in the code. And what you often see, and I want to find a nice, boom, that's random. Let's just create a new file there and look over here. There's a you know, anytime in your code, when you, I don't know, this is like some method, when you see that you have stuff like, you know, friend name, I don't know what's the example, I don't even, friend, like I don't know, let me have less. We might have like self, friend, you know, parent, employer, company. Basically, anytime you see this, where rather than these being method calls, you're kind of reaching through multiple different classes to kind of get to some ultimate instance variable like this. This is a sign that you're breaking the Demeter principle, is that you just shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't have kind of, you shouldn't be connecting a long chain of dependencies through a whole series of objects. The objects should be kind of encapsulated, and you shouldn't know so much about their interiors to be able to do this kind of thing. I don't know if that helps. But yeah, I'm starting to see, I've certainly seen quite a few people, you know, end up with these quite convoluted relationships, and I've been able to say, oh yes, no, that's the Demeter principle. You know, you want to break it up, and so you've got, you know, even if it's things like this, that you just make sure that you're only doing a sort of a suitable number of steps, and then you're sort of wrapping that in a method so that you guarantee a degree of encapsulation.
Is it similar to like ask, don't tell?
Oh.
Where you can tell a class, you can ask the class.
You want, and this is true, I think, throughout all sorts of aspects of computer science and so on. It's the encapsulation. It's all about I want to be able to not have to worry about how things are working behind the scenes. I want to have a simple interface that's clear. I want this, and it comes back. And I shouldn't have to provide very complex. I shouldn't. I mean, in some ways, you might, with certain sort of patterns, like there's a strategy pattern or the template pattern, and you might provide some degree of complexity about how something should be dealt with, and that's up to the class if it's going to provide an access of that kind. But yeah, you shouldn't have too much knowledge of the internals of the thing. You shouldn't be able to tell it the details of how it should be arranging its properties and its variables, because you just shouldn't know about them. So yeah. Any oh, I guess I was stuck on annoyingly there for the people in the recording. I was stuck on Nikita's screen there. I had just been showing that like a series of different instance variables, you know, over different objects is bad. Don't do that. Did anybody else have any thoughts at all on the design pattern stuff? We're just still going to do a quick check on the Q&A. No questions there. It's pretty early for the design pattern stuff, actually. I'll just go and check in. What was the thing I would check? I would check post questions in the. No, that's one thing. Over here. No, that's in there. Did anybody have any comments or thoughts on the previous week's material, which I think we remind ourselves, what were they? Previous with that was the project management and stuff, fixing bugs. Yeah. Maybe we should, and do sort of stop me and redirect me at any time. Maybe we'll just move on to looking at the review, second week analysis. This is of a couple of weeks back. So this is turnover of students joining not the MOOC itself, but the assessment system MCAFE. So we had some new ideas and different pieces. I'm not sure that I necessarily understand. The roll-off rate of the return students is better. I'm not sure what that means. But so, yeah, so we had, let's have a look here. So we had 17 comments of this. So we got people saying they'd like us to present Rails 4 improvements, especially in terms of security, device. That's a great topic. Yeah, we cover that here at Makers. Yes, Rails 4 improvements. That would be good. We'd definitely like to have that. Yes, I mean, that would be a course overhaul that I think would not take place any earlier than spring 2015. More front-end frameworks, more security, more authentication or authorization. Yes, at least one homework showing how it can be done with Rails. That'd be a good idea. Yes, a lot of security stuff. Okay. Yeah, and then continuous integration would be an good addition, of course. I'll mention actually, if people are interested in continuous integration and some of the other things, we will be running in August TA training course that's it's called Managing Distributed Teams, and we'll look at some of these topics. You can take it, you don't have to do the TAing, but basically to prepare people for being teaching assistants on the next one of the course, and also for doing a project version of the course. We'll be covering some of those topics there. Yeah, people saying, yeah, we created the IRC chat client and every page were optional. We had tried to provide that setting and it broke, and yes. That's frustrating. I do hope to overhaul the chat before the next run of the course. A chat where people will be able to answer in any time zone. Yeah, I mean, that was part of the hope with the TA training course, was that we were going to train up a lot more TAs and have people, well, I think various things such as the World Cup have kind of, sucked up certain people's free time. It's, I think we've definitely seen a bigger drop-off in the number of active TAs this time around. Someone saying, yeah, updating to the very latest versions of the Ruby Rails and Sensitive Gems, that would be great. More time for RSpec study, more examples of work and RSpec unit tests, yeah. Some recommended answers to the homework from the tutors, yes. I mean, I think for these kind of things, I mean, we have the ongoing challenge of providing recommended answers. I think if you want to see examples of RSpec and Cucumber in real life, come and join us at Agile Ventures, and we can show you lots and lots of that. You'll also see that as part of the. I mean, sort of at the moment, there is no 1693, which is like a projects course, but the closest thing, if you come and take the TA training course and come on through, that would be the closest way to do that. I guess we've got some demographics there, showing that usefulness to career, technical difficulty, and grade, or what's on there? Enthusiasm, and the high enthusiasm, that's good to see. Number of students, that's what that means. How would you grade the offensive course? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. That's what happened. Other bits of data are necessary, so interesting, then. God, goodness me. Lots of graphs. Yeah. So, I mean, I can make that available to people in the, if you want to browse through it themselves. But, yeah, I think that's covering the key things that I wanted to cover today. Does anybody else have anything else? I see Beethoven has joined us, and David O. Great to have you with us. Does anybody have any other bits and pieces they would like to chat about? Or, goodness me, some noisy motorbikes here in London, so roundabouts. We'll just wait for them to pass. Yeah, we've got Quiz 2 coming up, being released tomorrow. Yep, is that, are we done for today? Is there anything else we'd like to chat about?
So,
I think
I
yes.
have a quick question.
Yeah, go for it. Go ahead as I try and work out who spoke. Is that Beethoven?
I had one question. So
Yeah,
I found I don't know if this is a bug or if this is a generally, it seems to be in the typo homework.
Yes.
the typo system actually does open. It does a couple of opens using, I think, I would imagine OpenURI, and connects to things like Typosphere and Google.
Okay.
Is
Yeah.
that a problem?
Well, that depends.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, in the SaaS world, we would be very much expecting our applications to be connecting to other SaaS services in order to consume their content and use them in ways for the greater good. There can be a problem in as much as when you're running your tests, those services should be effectively stubbed out. And I don't know. I mean,
Right.
are you saying that you've noticed that when you're running the tests that it's connecting to those services?
Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
two things. One is I noticed that, for example, when I'm behind the firewall, right? So sometimes I'm going to be working on the homework
Yeah.
in an environment where I am enclosed.
Yes.
Those services basically hang, right?
Yes.
And oddly enough, and I'm not sure if this is related, that
Yeah.
if I'm an admin user, they don't hang as much, right?
No.
And I'm completely puzzled as to why, because I imagine Open doesn't care, right? But I don't know what the
No.
base configuration for Open is. Presumably, right? Presumably, it would have, it may have some configuration that would be different for an admin user as opposed to a non-admin user. But
Yeah.
having said that, it seems like that so that's just one thing with the Open being kind of a hidden thing about typo that we really haven't explored. But the other issue is that OpenURI itself opens like a whole slew of possibilities, right? Which is that you can have the system in effect aggregate information from sources that I think of it as like mid-tier to mid-tier, or mid-tier to somewhere else in the ether, right? So I can imagine that I would want to write a capability that says, okay, if I have my Rotten Potatoes, I can, and then somebody says they want to rate a movie in Rotten Potatoes, it goes to IMDb and sucks out all the information out. Boom, it's right there, right? It'll be great, right?
Yes, and I mean, I think that's I would see that as a feature. That latter description, the fact that we can reach out and grab stuff from other services, that's a feature, right? It's nice to be able to do that. But it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, I mean, typo is a legacy code base. I mean, this is I mean, I guess you could make an argument to say that maybe in order to avoid hitting those services unnecessarily, it would be good to make sure that we provided typo in a form when we made some minor changes to it, so that those things were effectively stubbed in the same way that when we're doing RESTful Oracle Bacon homework, we stub out the Oracle Bacon service. And so, yes, I mean, that's at the same time we could turn that bug into a feature, which we could say that in what we're demonstrating here with the legacy code is that sometimes legacy code bases are going to have these kinds of problems, and that's something that needs to be, you need to be aware of and need to be ready to overcome. So, although in terms of the time constraints allowed, it may be not so reasonable to expect everybody to be stubbing out those things as well as getting the feature. I'm going to actually go ahead and add that to our issue tracker, because I think that's something that maybe needs to be addressed. Let's go to Pivotal Tracker and get into one of our projects. Yeah, I mean, they really should be stubbed out. That would be the best practice. And but open source projects that are developed by lots of people over time, even closed source projects, sometimes they're even uglier. Because no one can see them. And who knows? So that's the wrong. There we go. Right. I've got a new way here to do. So I think I'm going to add a story there here, which was like typo.
I mean, I don't know if just putting the I was looking at the OpenURL last night. It looks like it has a timeout capability. So, I mean, maybe they don't have to be stubbed out, but they certainly could be timed out so that
Well, I think it's like independently of the open URI capabilities, best practice would say that they should be stubbed out, because what you really don't want to have happening is you don't want to be like spamming those third-party services when you happen to be running
Typosphere and Google.
Yeah, absolutely, because we should be, or everyone should be good, internet citizens, and that means that we don't, send traffic unnecessarily. Clearly, in some cases, we would actually, with a running typo instance, sure, that's fine. It's deployed in Heroku for the purpose of operating and delivering the service that it delivers. It's perfectly fine for it to reach out to other network services that are providing those services under some terms and use them in a reasonable manner, and that's all fine. But particularly because what happens a lot if you run all of your specs, the same thing happens over and over and over again, over your features or what have you. It's really not. I don't think anybody would say we want our service to receive hits from every time you run your tests, and so sensibly.
Right.
You will stub them out, and you will define. As you remember, maybe from the RESTful homework, we had a series of the XML documents that the Oracle Bacon service would return there as fixtures, and it's also a process of being clear about the interface between us as one service and some other service out there by having kind of the stubbing as a process of documenting what's the the data flow that we expect and the formats that it's in. And so, I mean, the danger there, of course, is that if you stub that closely, potentially the services change, your test still passes, but and you can only
that's integration, isn't it?
Right. Well, even beyond integration, I mean, you kind of, at some point, if you're relying on an external service, in order to really check that works, that has to be done kind of in the running system. I mean, unless people who provide APIs may provide specific staging or testing environments that are set up to allow you to run tests against. So in that case, that's then fine. But it comes down to the individual service that you're using and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, great point to bring up there. Absolutely, yes. Thank you for sharing that. Any other questions or thoughts from anyone? If not, I might give my voice a rest and wrap up. I just check in with Petra. How are you doing? Did you have some code you wanted to show us, or you're okay?
No, I think I know the problem is.
Oh, okay. Oh, well done. Well done. Good show. Okay. Well, great stuff. I think I'm not sure if we'll have a session next Wednesday. I'll certainly let you know as soon as possible whether we are or not. And then we'll definitely have a session the following week. And then we'll see. It's getting to the point. The course is wrapping up. I'll be off on my holidays. So yeah, but I'll definitely make sure that it's clear in advance how many more of the remaining Wednesdays we can do things. We've only got one more homework remaining, which I don't think I'll give too much away by saying it. I think it's a relatively straightforward homework compared to everything else. We've got quiz 2 being released tomorrow, and then there's nothing the following week. We've got some very interesting JavaScript materials being released, but there's no homework associated with those. And then there's the final section is also quite interesting on database optimization and performance and DevOps issues, and there's a database performance framework associated with that. And if you've used databases before, I think you'll find it very straightforward. So you're in the home stretch now.
By the way, Sam, like you had made a list of what do you call that? The list of improvements in the next run of the course. So like assignment in JavaScript would be really useful.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate an assignment in JavaScript. Absolutely. Yes. So but we've got space here for another assignment. I think Armando had been working on. He's going to be distracted with working on Sinatra assignments. And then there's also a thought to adjust the course so that we introduce Sinatra rather than, or not instead of Rails, but we introduce Sinatra as a sort of stepping stone towards Rails. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the big change that I'm going for is trying to take all of the existing homeworks and make them all available in repositories that have the full specs associated with them. So it's clear exactly how you're being graded, and in fact, you're able to run kind of, you rely less on the autograder for feedback about how you're doing, because that, that's sometimes slow, sometimes the autograder crashes and what have you, and that you can get that feedback as soon as possible, ideally on your own machine. And so that's my highest priority. And once we kind of get that sorted, then I'll probably devote myself more to actually maybe generating my own homeworks. But I think Armando has a number of things up his sleeve there. Osipenko is just saying, in the legacy code, we found many gems. They're constantly changing. Sometimes they need to prescribe some code in our files. What we need to pay attention. I mean, gems are, this is, the libraries, and for whether it's Ruby or whatever, Python or whatever you're working with, JavaScript, C#, doesn't matter, Swift, whatever it happens to be, you are potentially dependent on all sorts of other software libraries that people have written before. And the kind of the best solution that we have so far, is dependency management systems like Bundler, which is the one that we happen to use with Ruby, that allows us to specify the gems that the project depends on and which versions of those gems that we need. And so, there's kind of an ongoing battle there in that the available file libraries are kind of, churning away beneath us, and new ones come out, new versions that break the ways that we were using them in the past, and some of them stop being maintained and start to fall apart and they don't work, and so on. And it's just an ongoing challenge. When you say, what do we need to pay attention? I think that in some ways, ideally what you're doing is trying to avoid linking yourself to specific versions of gems if you can avoid it, and then running, doing fresh installs on, that will, as a result of running bundle install, will grab the various latest versions of the gems and running your tests in those fresh setups. And so if you've got continuous integration in place, every time you do a check-in, then you're doing a commit to your server, then it's going to go and rerun, and it's going to do a full install of all of your gems, and you're going to know as soon as possible if there's some incompatibility or some inconsistency. What tends to happen, though, of course, is often when there's an incompatibility and you're working on some feature, is you're tempted to lock to a particular version of the gem rather than try and work out how to fix your code. And everybody's guilty of that because who wants to spend all their time updating? And so it's a slippery slope, and you end up with, as for example with typo, it's locked to lots of versions of old gems, and it's sort of built up as a technical debt, so that it becomes more and more difficult to maintain over time. Although, actually, I haven't been monitoring the main typo repo. We cloned it at one point, and we've got a sort of a caught in amber version of it some time ago. So, no disrespect to the typo people who are doing good work, could be that that's all up to date. But I know we have exactly the same issue in our Agile Ventures projects, and it's just a hard one. I don't know if that answers your question, Osipenko.
So in follow-up to that, is there how difficult would it be to have a homework where we do, let's say, a migration from Rails 3 to Rails 4? Is that process really straightforward, or is that like completely hairy that should only be done by people who've taken the course 7 times?
I think it's not necessarily, like, that would be hairy or not, depending upon the kind of application that you were trying to migrate. So if you had a relatively straightforward application that wasn't depending on too many Rails 3 specific features, yeah, that would be a potential homework. Although it's an interesting question there about whether would it be better to make the whole course use Rails 4, or would it be better to have, are people interested in that migrating from one thing to another process? Because that actually is a skill in and of itself. Like, and I've gone from various versions of Rails to another, and it's something that I hate. And that's it's its own bag of cats, if you know what I mean. It's a cat's bag of spammers. I'm not sure. Yeah, and there'll be, I'm sure Rails 5 and 6 and 7 and so on in the future. And as there is this phrase I think they have, which is Rails, build a blog in less than 30 seconds and spend the rest of your life upgrading to the latest version of Rails. I think it's got, that was, back in the battle. I think that the upgrade process has got, somewhat more straightforward. But yeah, in general, I'd much rather create the new app from scratch in the new Rails rather than being forced to upgrade it, by moving all of the files around. Particularly because what Rails does, Rails you generate, it lays out all these different files in the file system, and then they make changes about where they can go. So, yeah. But that certainly we'll take that in mind as a potential homework. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be Rails either, right? I mean, the larger question is that if you are working in a software engineering environment where you are dependent on either third-party libraries or also dealing with, let's say, you're dealing with a software system that's a closed system, right?
Yeah.
And you upgrade your SAP, it goes from version X to version X+1, or you maybe jump a version, you go to X+2, right?
Yeah.
That is a migration/upgrade, right?
Sure.
That is realistically a hard problem, but it's also a problem that people face all the time and people dread, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, is it worth having a homework about, and the other thing is, can you even have a homework about it, right? Or is it just you when you deal with SAP, you deal with it, right?
They would like more on the process of how do you choose which libraries to use. Like it's absolutely this process of because actually that's what while there's this big focus on coding, to the extent that we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel, and there's all these great libraries out there. One of the key things that you're doing as a software engineer is looking at the libraries, assessing to see if they might be right for your project, how stable they are, how reliable they are, how well maintained they might be in the future, and then pulling them into your project, and then coping with them when they fall apart, break down, don't do what you want, this, that, and the other. So it's an interesting question about whether one could create a nice, concise homework that will encapsulate some of those things. In the Agile Ventures projects, that's what we're dealing with all the time. So, jump in there for experience of that. The other thing is we also have with the autograders, which is one of the projects in Agile Ventures, is it is possible we're trying to make it possible, and it is possible, for everyone to author their own homeworks. So, there's a limited amount of time that myself and Armando and Dave can spend on generating new homeworks. It does require a lot of effort and energy. We generated a new Git immersion homework that we've used in some other courses. We didn't use that in this course. There's other bits and pieces that we're working on there for different things. But if people have got ideas for homeworks and they want to get involved, then we can get you set up with the autograder system, and very happy to pair with you to help create these homeworks. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question about partials. Is there any way how I can trace where this partial comes from, and in where at the upper level in which partial it includes? Because in this homework typo, I sort of trying to understand how do you figure out that the form included in edit, and then at the topmost included in the something else. So I wonder, is there any way how I can sort of make a picture of where this component included or so?
It would be nice if the Railroady gem, like making pictures of the model relationships and the controller relationships, could do a view relationships thing. That's the kind of thing. I'm not aware of one existing, but we could. I wonder if there's a Rail.
Because it is a little bit messy.
Sure.
When I deal with a few, when I try in parallel, I try to learn Rails tutorial by Michael Harlow. There is no such many partials, but when I try to do typo, there's a lot of views, and all of them sort of included in different ways.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, no, I hear what you're saying. I'm not aware of anybody having created something for that. Yeah, I mean, in the absence of somebody having created an automatic tool for that, and one might exist, I just don't know about it, is the process would be to be being clear from any like, in principle, from any URL that you have that goes into the Rails system, that is going to end up being responded to by a controller. So if you've got some just web page open that has some, here's a view that I've received from the system, and this is like maybe the article edit page in typo, you should be able to trace from the URL through the system to which is the controller that's responded to this and what has it rendered, and then trace through the series of, from the high level, okay, it's rendering this thing, which are the partials that it's pulling out. So, and you'll kind of need to make a mental model of that or note that down. I think if you, like in your case, for example, you've discovered the underscore form.html.erb thing, and then you want to know where is that being pulled in by. I mean, you can search for, in the code base, like render form things, but then you don't know that is it that form? There may be other partials in other places called underscore form.html.erb. So you kind of, I think you need to go top down, right? Starting at what is the high level view that the controller renders, and then see, you know, by carefully analyzing that code, see which partials it pulls in. I agree that there is potentially, particularly for this, working with this system, an argument for being able to map which partials are being pulled in, although I would say maybe sensibly more effort will be spent on making sure that you don't have very convoluted routes. And if you're designing your own app, and people refactoring apps, is that if, where it's all possible, you want to avoid any kind of complexity. And I think it's, we talk a lot about don't repeat yourself and drying things out, and if things are similar, right, let's just have one copy of it and let's pull it from lots of different places. And I think that generally agrees is a good thing. The flip side is, every time that you do that, every time you extract your dry component, you're actually introducing a dependency between that single component that you've extracted and the elements that it's connected to. And so we can sort of, like, it seems quite strange to me looking at the typo system. You know, they've got this like shared elements extra folder, and there's this kind of like several step thing of like pulling in these different things. They've obviously extracted there, they've dried it out, but they've also introduced a series of dependencies, and there's also a convoluted chain now, and you have to ask the question, are we throwing out the baby with the bathwater? So, you know, are we and that's, I think it's a very common problem in legacy, and you particularly see it in legacy code. So I'm afraid I can't offer much more solace than those words, I think, at this moment. And I was just going to go, if that's wrap that one up, just maybe as a final wrap up, I was going to go back to something we were talking about there with Beethoven, which is about the question of what are useful homeworks to do. And I sometimes, for me, I wonder about the utility of the homeworks relative to actually working in projects that are real projects. There's something, you know, I guess the nice thing about a homework that might be, you know, a simple upgrade from a Rails 3 to Rails 4 for some simple application, or let's take the RESTful Oracle Bacon homework or the typo homework. I guess the nice thing about the homework is that they're constrained to a degree. I mean, you know, of course, typo is like a big bottomless pit that you can fall into and never get out of. But I mean, there's a degree to which they're kind of constrained, and everybody's working on the same sort of thing, so there's a good kind of crossover. There's always the worry that by extracting a homework technical principle, that it's somewhat artificial, and actually, you know, the best experience is likely to come from working on real projects. I don't know. Clearly, the best designed homework would pull out those wonderful principles and emphasize them, and then they would shine out, and you didn't go off and be able to use, and you know, all of your other activities would be enhanced and warmed and be made more effective by that thing. But I guess that's the ongoing ongoing struggle. People have a limited amount of time to kind of get involved in open source projects. Anyway, I think that's my thoughts today. Cool. Well,
Cool.
I look forward to seeing you guys. It's great that we have packed hangouts here. I very much enjoy discussing these things with you. I guess what we didn't do was we didn't look at the forums. I kind of yeah. I think the forums are kind of a bottomless pit that I could spend an infinite amount of time in. I think we've probably covered enough topics for the day. I'm not seeing questions for I think we were active and then we got hot. Not sure that I understand that. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the where are the TA? I think I think the World Cup has sucked away our TAs. It's a shame. We'll have to work out some sort of anti-football device for next time around. Maybe it's not the next 4 years we should say. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'll wrap the broadcast up there, unless anybody wants to jump in and stop me with anything. 3, 2, 1.